The venison was donated by Hunters for the Hungry, which has been donating meat to the shelter since 1993. Thompson said he is a member of the group and donated venison during the recent hunting season. The DHH took the action after someone at the shelter complained about being fed deer meat. I'm going to read that again. The DHH took the action after someone at the shelter complained about being fed deer meat. I guess somebody there didn't like deer meat. The mission's executive director, Henry Martin, told Fox News that the mission has been serving venison for years in deer, chili, and other dishes. Martin said venison is good food, high in protein, low in cholesterol. The DHH was asked to allow the mission to return the meat to the processor, but the request was denied. Martin said the mission serves about 200,000 meals annually without a dime of assistance from the state or federal government. Fox News quoted Richard Campbell, a founder of Hunters for the Hungry, as saying the venison comes from deer management programs where hunters must kill a large number of deer. Once hunters have all the meat they need, they donate any additional meat to the needy. Campbell said the meat is prepared for the shelters by processing plants. Thompson told Action News 17 that he is outraged over the incident. He said he is working with other legislators, deer hunters, and state agencies in Louisiana and other states to legalize the consumption of venison at shelters. He is also in contact with lawmakers and hunters in other states to learn how their programs work. Thompson said he agrees that food safety is important, but feeding the needy and hungry is also important. He said the meat is taken directly to the processors, which are inspected by the federal government. It goes directly from the processors to the missions. Thompson said he wants to try to modify the state health code and expand it beyond the federal food code. He said he was told DHH officers that there had better not be any copycat incidents such as this while the legislature is working on a solution. While Thompson said he agrees that the DHH must ensure food safety, in this case the employees should have made a phone call to higher-ups to find out if there might be a better way to handle it. He said sometimes people become ill eating in restaurants that are carefully monitored. He said he tries to remind state departments that they are responsible to the taxpayers. Thompson said this was a case where workers spent more time and authority than common sense to address them to address the matter. That's kind of a no-brainer there. At least the meat could have been given to an animal shelter, he said. It is absolute waste of natural resources, he said. It is also an indictment of the giving spirit of hunters. It seems sort of vindictive, he said. The mission could have provided over 3,200 high-protein meals with the venison that was destroyed. Thompson said he feels good about the fact that there are shelters that will take in homeless and destitute people, and those shelters should be given all the public support possible, including donations of food from hunters. He questions if the DHH responds in like manner to cases where illegal game and fish are seized by state agents and given to public institutions. Pugh said this was a case of good Samaritans helping the needy in a shelter by trying to feed the least of our brethren, and then the government comes along and interferes. Yeah, I caught that article last week. Seems pretty idiotic to me that they would destroy meat like that. I mean, it's the homeless people. I mean, I guess they had something else to eat at the shelter, but if not, I mean, where do homeless people normally get their food from? Think about that. I don't think the federal government inspects dumpsters to make sure the food quality is okay to eat in dumpsters. There was another article I came across. This has to do with schools. This one came from, Mr. Conservative, I imagine, which is a blog. It says, school offers counseling for students emotionally scarred by gun-shaped strawberry tart. We recently learned that a 7-year-old Maryland boy was suspended from school when the strawberry tart he was trying to mash into a sculpted mountain took on the shape of a gun. If you thought that this story couldn't get more ridiculous, you were wrong. It turns out that the school later sent a letter to parents warning them about this disturbing incident and offering counseling to any children who were emotionally injured by seeing a misshapen gun made out of a chewed-up strawberry tart. This is the kind of world we're living in now, folks. It's just plain ridiculous. Um, there was something that came across. If you're the conspiracy theory type, which I'm not saying that's not a bad thing. It's actually part of being a watchdog, really. But there was a story that came out. Let's see. This is dated March 4th. It says DHS orders nearly 3,000 mine-resistant armored vehicles for basically it was for the special rescue teams affiliated with ICE. I don't know if anybody had read this story or found it, but it was misquoted. These 3,000 armored vehicles were actually vehicles that were ordered by the U.S. Marines from Navistar Defense, and lost my train of thought here. The DHS obtained 16 of them, which were donated by the military to the DHS for DHS to use in high risk issue of warrants. So just wanted to clear that up because that was something that was kind of making the rounds through the social networks and stuff. Speaking of that, I have an email address set up in case you want to email in. The email address is Louisiana Watchman at gmail.com. If you got a comment or a question, or if there's something that you would wish for me to address on a future show, please feel free to send an email in. There was something that I've been following something for a while. It's involving a Louisiana sinkhole. I don't know if anybody out there has been following this, but it's something that started in August, and it's expanded to almost 9 square acres. The experts have no clue when the sinkhole is going to stop. It keeps expanding. It's a salt dome, or I should say a salt cavern, which is in the salt dome. The salt cavern collapsed. The sidewall collapsed on the cavern, and it's been steadily sucking up earth since August. It's something that y'all may, if you do any kind of online searching or follow the news online, that might be something you just want to keep an eye on, because Governor Jindal is yet to go down to Bayou Corn. This is the area where the sinkhole's at, and he's yet to go down there and visit these people. People have been asking him to come down and look at the place, look at the area, and address their issues. These people, it's a small community. I believe it was 350 people were evacuated. They want answers, and they feel like they're not getting answers from the Department of Natural Resources and Texas Brine, which is the company that was leasing the cavern. So you may want to keep an eye on that. I don't know if you familiar with the woman Erin Brockovich. They had a movie that came out. Julia Roberts starred in it. It's about an attorney she wasn't an attorney back then. She worked for an attorney that was involved in a major class action lawsuit about drinking water being contaminated by a chemical company, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, she's I think she's down there today, visiting with the people down there, talking to them, addressing their issues, and seeing if there's anything she can do about it. So there may be something big coming down the pike with that. Here's another story I came across involving kindergartners. Up in Chicago. This is from WKEF ABC 22. This came out on the 27th of February. Chicago public schools students get their sex education in the 5th grade, as most do in the U.S., but CPS, Chicago Public Schools, wants to change that so the instruction begins at age 5. Parents who are uncomfortable with the new policy will be able to opt out. CPS says the curriculum will conform to each age group. For example, kindergartners through third graders will learn about their anatomy, all living things that reproduce, appropriate, inappropriate touching, while fourth graders will focus on puberty and HIV/AIDS. It's not until after fifth grade that teachers will lead discussions about human reproduction, contraception, and abstinence. The proposed policy follows the National Sexuality Education Standards put together by 4 health organizations. Now, I take issue with this. If you're a parent, I'm not a parent. I don't have biological children, but if you're a parent with children, why are you allowing national sexuality education standards to be enforced or taught in your child's school? Sexuality, I mean, learning about your anatomy and stuff like that, I mean, it wasn't until high school and, physical biology or something like that when we started learning about the sexual organs of a frog. This is a situation, especially, I mean, if you're a Christian, a born-again Christian, this is something that you yourself as a parent should teach your child. Which, in this article it says it's not until fifth grade that teachers will lead discussions about human reproduction, contraception, and abstinence. They put abstinence last. That should be number one, abstinence. And to teach a fifth grader about this stuff, I think it's crazy. Because I think it's going to do more of making them curious than anything else. It's just one of these things. It's all part of we having to take our government back. The federal government's not set up to dictate education standards to children in the state of Louisiana or in the parish of Tangipahoa or St. Helena. The education standards should be set by the local school boards. I mean, to me, the state shouldn't even be involved in setting education standards. I mean, we got teachers and we got principals in schools in the parish. The basics should be taught: math, reading, English, physical sciences. What's coming down the pike from the federal government, I mean, these are things that if it's to be learned, it should be learned in the home. The parent teaching the child this. I don't believe that we should, you as a parent should allow strangers to teach your children this kind of curriculum. It's one of the things that we need to wake up about. For years, ever since the Department of Education was created, which I think was in 1977. It was during the Carter administration. I'm pretty sure of that. They've just grown bigger and bigger. Grabbing more power from states and from local communities and dictating, what children are going to be taught. I mean, if you look at the turn of the 20th century, there was no Department of Education. You had a schoolhouse, and you had kids that went to school, and they learned how to read and write, and they learned how to do math problems, and they even taught Bible stories. That can't be done today in public schools, and that's a travesty, because if say the city of Amite, if the residents who live in Amite, if they want their children to be taught Bible stories, well, they should have that's within their rights to do that. If pulling out my Constitution. This is the United States Constitution, and we're gonna look at the the First Amendment, and this is something that I started to get into last week. Ran out of time, and it's kind of there's something else that I wanted to get into today, but we got to take care of this. Amendment number 1: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This amendment, okay, when the Constitution was put together, the 13 colonies were afraid of a central, all-powerful government. The 13 colonies at the time, they were acting as sovereign states, sovereign countries, and the Constitution was put together. It was to bring these 13 colonies together in a common cause to form a republic, a confederation, whereby, basically, one watched the others back. The First Amendment, containing to the freedom of religion, that amendment was to tell the federal government, you will not establish a religion over us. The federal government will not establish a religion over the states. Okay. As far as the states go, and I should have, I thought about it and I didn't get to look it up, but Virginia, the Constitution of Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, they actually had it wasn't that they established a state religion, but they recognized Christianity as the religion of that state. So what I'm trying to get at here is that if you're a Christian, and I'm gonna include all the denominations. If you're a Christian and you feel it's healthy that your child be taught about the Ten Commandments, that your child be taught about Adam and Eve and Samson and Delilah, and how David took down Goliath, and how Mary gave birth to Jesus, and how Jesus went to the cross for our sins and died and was resurrected and ascended into heaven. If you want your children to be taught that in your school, the federal government has no say so in that matter. It's what you're not establishing a state religion. Okay. The Constitution is to protect us from the federal government establishing a they'll say state religion, but really it's a national religion. Which you can kind of bend. I can bend it around and say they have established a religion in that they say it's okay to abort babies, to kill babies while they're in the mother's womb. Christianity, I mean, that's a big no-no. God knew you before you existed, so it's life begins in the womb. So I'm not going to get back on that. I kind of spent a lot of time last week on that, but there's something I want to point out. Y'all, you need to think about that. Get you a pocket Constitution and read it. Actually, you should actually get the Louisiana Constitution and read it, because there's a section in there. I mean, you have a Bill of Rights, so to speak. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick for you. Read that to you. In the meantime, get a commercial break in. Do you or someone you know suffer from high or low blood sugar, high or low blood pressure, being overweight? Finally, there is a product that delivers what it says. You will lose weight by burning fat, not muscle. Your blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, and lipids will get to healthy levels. It helps with willpower over food. It helps with the desire to binge eat. Plexus Slim is an all-natural product that will help with all these issues. It has no caffeine, no stimulants. It is not a meal replacement and comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. Go to www.plexusslim.com/Christy C and put in ambassador number 100981. It's 100981 to place an order for Plexus today and take control of your health. Or you can call Christy at 985-514-4530. It's 985-514-4530. Call her and there are 3 and 7 day samples available, so give her a call. Okay, let's get to the. I'm going to read this out to you. In the Louisiana Constitution, Section 3. Right to keep and bear arms, which is something I need to touch on. Freedom of religion. Section 8. No law shall be enacted respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, even in the state constitution, you got to look at it as the state, according to this section, freedom of religion clause, the state will not establish a religion over the parishes. Okay, it's not saying that you can't exercise in your community, whether you want to be a Christian community or a Jewish community or a Buddhist community or a Hindu community or Muslim community. It's restricting the state from establishing a religion. In a meet, if the school in a meet if you want your child to be taught the principles and values that the Bible teaches us, then you should have every right as a citizen to be able to do that, and as a parent. If you don't want your child being taught that, when I went to grammar school, my parents sent me to a private school, and we had religion class. If you're a parent and you don't want your child being taught stories out the Bible or lessons out the Bible, then the simple solution to that is to have a curriculum aside from religion class, where if you want your child to learn how to weave baskets or make Play-Doh skyscrapers or whatever, then that should be your prerogative. But to say that your child's going to come to school and they can't pray and they can't be taught about God, they can't be taught about Noah's flood, that's an injustice on us as citizens, in the state, as well as in the country. I mean, the government has the federal government has no authority to come in and say you can't let your children pray in school. I mean, it's ridiculous. The other thing here, Section 11 of the Louisiana Constitution, the right of each citizen to keep and bear arms is fundamental and shall not be infringed. Now that's how the amendment, the section used to read. It was amended last year. I don't know if you remember going to the ballot and seeing that the constitutional amendment to this section, and it passed. But now it reads: the right of each citizen to keep and bear arms is fundamental and shall not be infringed. Any restriction on this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny. Now there are state politicians and lawyers and advocates. They argue that actually strengthened our right to keep and bear arms, because now the court has to adhere to strict scrutiny. To me, and I've debated with friends about this. To me, it actually weakens our right to bear arms, because there was no restriction or scrutiny beforehand. The only restriction was that the state could not infringe upon your right to keep and bear arms. It's something, it's something that people need to look at. What I've learned, in the last 4 years, 6 years, is don't trust what somebody tells you, especially on TV. Don't trust what I say. I mean, look it up for yourself and study it. I'm on here as being the watchman that God calls us all to be, to warn, my brethren, of what's happening to our state and what's happening to our country. But don't trust what I say. I'm going to give you source documents sources as much as I can, and and if it's an opinion of mine, if it's my own opinion, I'll express it as my opinion. But I hope that these things that I'm telling you will just make you raise an eyebrow and look into it and decide for yourself. Decide for yourself if, what, you're right, the U.S. Constitution has no right to dictate to us if we can establish, be it a meet or independence or tangible whole parish as a Christian community. The federal government has no authority to do that. That was to prevent the federal government from establishing their religion upon the states. Okay, the Constitution is not there to restrict us. The U.S. Constitution is put in place to restrict the federal government, so that federal government doesn't become a tyranny like the British government and King George III did, back in the late 1700s upon the colonies of America. That's the purpose of of our Constitution, is to prevent that kind of tyranny from happening again. And it is happening, and it's happening because we as citizens have allowed our politicians to go to Washington, get sucked into the system, get corrupted with money, and basically do the bidding of the special interest. And you and I, the only time they need us is every 2, 4 to 6 years to vote them back into office. The time has come to stop trusting these people that we send up to Washington D.C. Take the authority that they have claimed for themselves, to take it back and reassert our authority as self-governing citizens. That's the whole purpose of the founding of this country, to be self-governing, to be free from tyranny and oppression. Which brings me to the main topic that I want to talk about today, which is, I wanted to actually talk about it last week, and I never got around to it. I mentioned it last week. Let me see if I got it here. Yeah, 1 Timothy 6, chapter 6, verse 10 and 11. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which a while some coveted after. They have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. Now, I used that verse there, and I put it next to, gotta find this one. It's in Ephesians. Somewhere in Ephesians. Alright. We'll get it straight from the scripture. I don't know if you can hear me turning my pages. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. What what has happened in this country, and it's been an attack. It's been an attack since really this country was founded. There are those who have an unquenchable thirst for money, and they have tried and have failed 3 times before to set up a system to where all the wealth goes into their coffers. The 3 times that I'm talking about was back in 1781. A central bank was established, the Bank of North America, and it was controlled by private banks. It failed. They lost their charter. The second time was in 1790 with the First Bank of the United States. It also was privately owned by banks, and it also failed. 1812 was the third time. Now this is something you might have learned in history class back in the day. The bank that was established in 1812 was the Second Bank of the United States. Now this is the bank that Andrew Jackson killed. This is the one that he saw the evil that was involved with privately owned central banks handling the currency of a sovereign nation, and the banks retaliated. They actually tried. There was an agent that was hired to assassinate Andrew Jackson, and they would have succeeded, except for the pistol that this assassin had misfired twice. This is how serious these people take their money, or our money. They want our money. They want to control us. But President Jackson succeeded in defeating the bank. And then comes 1913. Well, let me step back. Actually, 1910. Off the coast of Georgia, island called Jekyll Island. 6 of the probably wealthiest men in the world met for a week. Pull up their names. One of them was J.P. Morgan. Well, it wasn't J.P. Morgan. It was a representative of his that was there. Nelson Aldrich, who at the time was the Republican whip in the Senate, chairman of the National Monetary Commission, business associate of J.P. Morgan, and father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr. The other gentleman was Abraham Piatt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Frank A. Vanderlip, President of the National City Bank of New York, the most powerful of the banks at the time, representing William Rockefeller, and the International Investment Banking House of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. The fourth gentleman there was Henry P. Davison, who was a senior partner of the J.P. Morgan Company. Benjamin Strong, who was head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust Company, and then Paul Wahlberg. He was a partner of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France, and brother to Max Wahlberg, who was head of the Wahlberg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. These 6 men sat down for 1 week on Jekyll Island and created the Federal Reserve System, or the Federal Reserve Act as it was known when it was passed in 1913. This is the first evidence of non-elected people writing legislation. It's it's now it's I mean it runs rampant. I mean you just how you figure 1,200 page bill comes out within days of announcing they're gonna that they're going to enact some sort of plan, be it Obamacare, say, or the TARP program or the stimulus packages. Our representatives did not write that legislation. That legislation was written by a entity separate from the government. This is one of the things that we need to be aware of, and to hold our elected officials, hold their feet to the fire on this. Who wrote the bill? Who wrote the bill? Well, it was introduced by so and so. I don't want to know who introduced the bill. I want to know who wrote the bill. Okay, that's the kind of questions that you need to start asking our representatives, because. And granted, I mean, maybe most of our elected officials, maybe they do this to, they don't realize what's going on. They don't understand that having some outside interest write a bill, like having Monsanto write the majority of the Food Safety Modernization Act of, was it 2010, I believe? Why? That's like you going to a bank and writing out the terms for a loan agreement. The bank will loan me $100,000 and will pay me an additional $200 a month till the contract reaches $100,000. I mean, it's crazy. it's crazy. But anyway, these 6 men sat down and they put together the Federal Reserve Act. It was passed. It was passed in December of 1913. Pretty much all the Senate had gone home for the holiday, and I was trying to find where, because they actually gave the number in this book that I was reading, the number of senators that were there that voted it, and it became law. Well, here, a little side note, this was something I found interesting. There was a subcommittee of the House Committee on Currency and Banking under the chairmanship of Arsene Pujo of Louisiana. So we got Louisiana involved in this. He had a little say in the matter of getting this act passed. But what ended up happening with the Federal Reserve System, though, it took the creation and regulation of money out of the hands of Congress. That's one of Congress's specific responsibilities. Let's see. Go back to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Says here that Congress shall have the power to regulate, to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and a foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. That's one of the specific responsibilities of Congress, and in 1913 they voted that authority away. The Congress had no authority to do that, to put the creation and regulation of money into the hands of private banks. You look, and I'm not talking about the small banks, in towns and stuff like that. I am talking about the major players around the world. J.P. Morgan Chase and Capital One, Citibank, Bank of America, these large mega banks, and they're not confined to the United States. They're worldwide. Anyway, a bank A bank is they're in business. And when you're in business to make money, make a profit. So what is it that banks sell, or what service do they perform to make profit? Well, they're in the money business. So what a bank, what the bank's going to do is the bank's going to make its money off of charging interest on loans, and in this case now, our money system actually creating money. They don't. Let me step back. They don't actually create it. They lend it into existence. There is a case. This was back in 1960. Where's the date at? Well, this is dated 1968. It's the state of Minnesota, county of Scott. First National Bank of Montgomery was the plaintiff versus Jerome Daly, who was the defendant. Now, what happened was Jerome Daly had bought a piece of property, and he went to First National Bank of Montgomery and he took out a loan for the property and paid on it. He paid on it for a few years, and then for whatever reason he couldn't make the payments no more, and the bank exercised their right to foreclose and claim the property. Let me read this brief to you. This is from the court. The above entitled action came on before the court and a jury of 12 on December 7th, 1968 at 10 a.m. Plaintiff appeared by its president, Lawrence V. Morgan, and was represented by its counsel, Theodore R. Melby. Defendant appeared on his own behalf. A jury of talesmen were called, impaneled, and sworn to try the issues in this case. Lawrence V. Morgan was the only witness called for plaintiff, and defendant testified as the only witness in his own behalf. Plaintiff brought this as a common law action for the recovery of the possession of Lot 19, Fairview Beach, Scott County, Minnesota. Plaintiff claimed title to the real property in question by foreclosure of a note and mortgage deed dated May 8, 1964, which plaintiff claimed was in default at the time foreclosure proceedings were started. Defendant appeared and answered that the plaintiff created the money and credit upon its own books by bookkeeping entry. Now this is key. What Jerome Daly was stating was that the bank did not have the money in their bank to lend to Mr. Daly. Mr. Daly claimed that all they did by the stroke of a pencil was create the money in a ledger, and thereby loaning that to Mr. Daly. So let me continue here. Defendant appeared and answered that the plaintiff created the money and credit upon its own books by bookkeeping entry. As the consideration for the note and mortgage of May 8, 1964, an alleged failure of consideration for the mortgage deed, and alleged that the sheriff's sale passed no title to plaintiff. The issues tried to the jury were whether there was a lawful consideration and whether the defendant had waived his rights to complain about the consideration having paid on the note for almost 3 years. Mr. Morgan admitted that all the money of credit which was used as a consideration was created upon their books, that this was standard banking practice. Okay, so what Mr. Morgan is saying is that what Mr. Morgan was saying was that it was common practice for banks to just, if you walked in and you wanted to borrow $1 million, it was common practice for the bank to just write the $1 million in the ledger. There's the $1 million, and then they give you a check. Okay, that's what this is saying right here. That this was standard banking practice exercised by their banking combination with the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, another private bank. Further, that he knew of no United States statute of law that gave the plaintiff the authority to do this. Plaintiff further claimed that defendant, by using the ledger book, created credit and by paying on the note and mortgage waived any right to complain about the consideration, and that the defendant was stopped from doing so. At 12:15 on December 7th, 1968, the jury returned a unanimous verdict for the defendant. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in me pursuant to the Declaration of Independence, the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution and laws of the State of Minnesota not inconsistent therewith, it is hereby ordered, adjudged, and decreed that plaintiff is not entitled to recover the possession of Lot 19, Fairview Beach, Scott County, Minnesota, according to the plat thereof, on file in the Register of Deeds office, that because of failure of a lawful consideration, the note and mortgage dated May 8, 1964 are null and void, that the sheriff's sale of the above described premises held on June 26, 1967 is null and void, of no effect. That plaintiff has no right, title, or interest in said premises or lien thereon as is above described. That any provision in the Minnesota Constitution and any Minnesota statute limiting the jurisdiction of this court is repugnant to the Constitution of the United States and to the Bill of Rights of the Minnesota Constitution and is null and void, and that this court has jurisdiction to render complete justice in this cause. That defendant is awarded costs in the sum of $75 and execution is hereby issued. 10-day stay granted. The following memorandum and supplemental memorandum made and filed by this court in support of this judgment is hereby made part hereof reference. Now, what happened in this case is that Jerome Daly claimed that he went and applied for the loan and he got the loan. And you know, when you go make a sizable loan like that, you have to put up collateral. And for whatever it was, Jerome Daly had put up collateral, be it money or asset. The bank, on the other hand, they're to have a risk in this agreement also. Their risk is that they're loaning the money to Jerome Daly. Well, what Jerome Daly claimed and won was that the bank never had the money in the first place to lend to him. That they created it by marking it in a book ledger, the amount that he wanted to borrow, and in doing so, they null and voided the contract because now the bank had no they had no skin in the game, basically. It's I'm trying to find because the bank did appeal this decision, and I'm trying to find. It's amazing how fast things get lost. Okay, there was an appeal made, and the title of this, I got this from usatherepublic.com/banks. The title of this is Federal Reserve Notes Declared Unconstitutional, Null and Void by the Court. Martin V. Mahoney, Justice of the Peace, Credit River Township, Scott County, Minnesota. And basically, I'm not going to read through this, but basically, this was a notification that appeal was refused. Basically, that, you know, pretty much saying that the bank violated the contract by creating fiat money, creating money and lending it into existence. This is the big key to our problems in the country today. Every dollar that the government gets is a loan from the Federal Reserve. You think that you pay taxes to fund the budget. It's not true. When the government borrows this money from the Federal Reserve, there's interest attached to it, and this has been going on. Now, this is this is 1913. The Federal Reserve Act was passed. There was still money was still backed by gold back then, and through the course of time, the dollar was ultimately taken off the gold standard. So now it's just there's no standard to hold how much money gets printed. The Federal Reserve loans this money to the federal government. They loan it at full face value to the federal government. If a dollar is a dollar to the government, the government turns around and uses that money, appropriates it, and spends it, which eventually it leads into the economy, and it kind of trickles down to you and me, private citizens. By the time it gets down to us, it's lost most of its value, because on the way down it loses value. And I think I got into this a little bit last week. The reason why we got prices going up is not necessarily because the cost of them is going up. It's because the value of our dollar is going down. And this is going to be a death spiral. It's a death spiral right now. We cannot get out of debt. We will not get out of debt under this system. Next week I'm going to try to get into a couple solutions that people have offered. One of them involves Ron Paul. He believes that getting the dollar back on the gold standard is the answer to this problem, and eventually doing away with the Federal Reserve. There's another gentleman. His name is Bill Still. He believes otherwise. He believes that the problem is that, for one, the government has the power to borrow money. It's in Article 1. Congress has the power to borrow money. That's one key issue that needs to be repealed, actually, for the government to borrow money. The other thing is what they call fractional reserve lending. Now, fractional reserve lending is a system whereby if I take in $100 and I write in my checkbook I got $100 and balance shows $100. What fractional reserve lending does, and the way it was commonly, the system that was commonly used, you can multiply that number by 10, or what they say leverage 10 times, and loan out. Instead of being able to loan out $100, now you're loaning out $1,000. Okay, and it used to be that you had to hold 10% reserve on the money that you loan out. So that out of that $1,000, you were supposed to keep $100 in the bank, but you can loan out $900. That's lending money into creation, and that's one of the big problems that we have today, is that that's how money is being created, that it's being lent into existence. The TARP, the two stimulus programs, that's how that money came into being. And when it took a year or two for it to finally get into the private sector and the commercial markets, and this is why we were seeing our prices going up. But Bill still believes in not backing this money by gold, that the government has the authority and the power to just create the money debt-free, with no interest attached to it, and they have the power to regulate the quantity of money that is printed. This is something I'm going to get into next week. If you're curious about it now, tune in next week, because I'm really going to get into what's involved in the Federal Reserve notes and what should be United States Treasury notes. Again, this is something. It's biblical. It's usury. The Bible preaches against usury, and our whole money system is based off usury. We're being raped by our own money system. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up for today. I hope I gave y'all something to think about over the week. Again, I'll be back next week, 11 o'clock. My name is Brian Bridges. This is Louisiana's Watchman radio program. I hope y'all enjoy the festivities this week and next weekend. Y'all have a nice day.